So we always start off our roundtables with this question. What are the 3 big trends you're tracking that you think are important, and what do you think makes them worth tracking? Julia?
Right. So 3 big trends I see coming out of that. First of all, the electrification of everything. The other one I'd point out is more low-income expansion. We've talked about, people are probably aware of adders for clean energy projects to be built in lower-income communities. There's also this $27 billion for a new greenhouse gas reduction fund. Those dollars are meant to target, in large part, lower-income communities and finding new solutions to deploy, clean energy there. And then finally, this is not, an Inflation Reduction Act only. It's, I think, American industrialization policy and innovation policy. And we can talk more about that in a moment. But the U.S. has historically underfunded innovation. It has not met even its own goals on that front. The combination of the IRA with the CHIPS Act, with the infrastructure bill, is, I think, going to unlock a whole new era for U.S. innovation to build here, deploy here, and then export abroad in a way we haven't seen before.
We're really looking at pure BEV sales numbers, and I think that's been really super interesting. I think we've hit peak PHEV. So PHEV sales have actually started to decline in some areas where BEV sales continue to rise. In Europe, we saw pure BEV sales as the only segment of auto that was still going up, despite like a 17% drop in total auto sales in the first half of 2022. We're watching new energy coming on the grid. I think that's one of the biggest things in terms of wind and solar coming on the grid, represent about 70% of new power coming on the grid. And that's awesome. It's an amazing thing to watch. But yet, we still have 30% new gas coming on the grid, and that's something that obviously we're concerned about. And then I think the third thing we're really fascinated, our executive team gets together and talks about, is the European transition. It's been really interesting watching the war in Russia, war in Ukraine, obviously, impacting so much of the European Union.
The first is something that we haven't thought about in the capital market in a while that presumably collapsed relatively famously, and that is yieldcos. And I was interviewing Andy Redinger from KeyBank, the largest project finance provider in North America, and he suggests that in about a month, we're going to see yieldcos coming to market again. And those yieldcos are now non-dividend trading yieldcos. And why is that important? Well, there are a lot of reasons why it's important, but among them, the collapse of the yieldco market was essentially because we didn't train the markets in how to handle the asset and to treat it like a long-term asset. The second is a trend that I think we've all seen, but with the passage of the IRA and the incentive for 30% for storage projects alone, not coupled with solar, the tail is truly finally wagging the dog. I think that what's fascinating about it is that the storage projects are a much more high density per square foot. It means that you can lock up interconnection, and in particular on, if you're looking at energy communities, you can lock up interconnection that maybe used to be now on retired fossil fuel plants, where you can deploy storage very quickly and relatively easily. And then the third, I think that green hydrogen is the meta trend happening right now in renewables. And I'm glad that I got to go first to say that. But green hydrogen, at least on our podcast, since we did the series back in December on green hydrogen, I get approached 5 to 6 times a week for someone who wants to talk about green hydrogen. And every respectable renewable energy platform that I know has a renewable, if not like a skunkworks team, a full-on green hydrogen, like 50 to 100 person team really working on green hydrogen. So I think that trend is going to be a juggernaut.
I can't quite get away from how excited I am about just the technology in the home right now. What is remarkable, especially with what I just came off of with the installation in my own home, is that these technologies are so robust. They're so robust. I mean, we're at a place where the grid literally could be backup. And I know that because I live it right now in my home in Makawao. And we have these 100% renewable energy mandates, but a place like Maui and Kauai and Big Island can hit that for sure. Oahu is a little tougher because we don't have the actual deployable space for solar. So people have been talking about wind a little bit. We went out to Vineyard Wind, met with the guys there, learned about the projects they were doing in offshore, and tried to figure out if that was something that was possible, like in a place like Oahu. And number 3, very briefly, I'll say, the developments that I'm seeing happening in stealth around the country, like full actual communities, multi-hundred unit homes, some affordable LTM, low to moderate income stuff, some rental stuff, some actually home and vacation and elite stuff.
But I sort of see four sort of key things. One, ESG capital is flooding our market in a very interesting, exciting way. We need $1 trillion a year investing into clean technologies that help solve the climate crisis. We're not even halfway there yet. So how do we manage that inflow of capital and make sure that we still have projects that work financially for investors and others? Two, the job market. Many of you, I know we're hiring. So many companies I know are hiring. We have to start looking beyond. I talked to a headhunter yesterday who was really talking about looking beyond our industry. How do we find folks from oil and gas? How do we find accountants that might be working in real estate, right? How do we find a modeler that might be from a REIT that we can bring over? And we as companies need to take the time to educate them on our industry. Third, one of the trends that we haven't had yet is supply chain. I don't think anyone anticipated what hit us during COVID. So how are we going to hit, so many projects are delayed right now. So how are we going to get them back on track and hit the numbers that we need to hit to be able to deploy the capital, deploy the projects. And then I think the other sort of high-level ones that are exciting to me is the emphasis in IRA to address climate justice and make sure that we're bringing this clean energy revolution to all communities.